So let's see how far we can get tonight with installing Tru64 on an Alpha 3000 M300X. So no need to install a whole bunch of languages I'm never going to use. So we'll go ahead and go with the US English installation. And put in my super secret password. And of course it wants it again. And then the host name of this computer. We are in the Eastern time zone, and currently we still have the disaster that is switching back and forth between summer and winter time. And today is 5/14/2023, and it is about 20:52, and of course our clock battery is dead. What are you gonna do with a 30-year-old machine? And then we please wait, because you have to do that a lot. Okay. And we're given a couple options. We could do all software, we could do just the minimum, or we could customize it. I got plenty of disk space, so we're going to go with installing everything we can. And of course it has to tell us what we're installing. pages and pages. And yeah, we got plenty of disk space to cover that, so we're going to go ahead and start the install. And even though we only have 64 meg of RAM, we're going to go ahead and put all the kernel options turned on, because why not? And we do not want to use the logical storage manager. It's kind of a waste when you have just a single disk and you're never going to put more than one. And then we want to use a custom file system layout because I've already labeled this disk ahead of time. If you're not using a disk that's in the disk table that comes with the operating system, it tends to do some really funky partitioning. And I've already partitioned this to give it the maximum amount of space to the user partition. And we twiddle our thumbs again. Okay, so we've got an 86.5 gig partition we're going to use for users. And we're going to format it with advanced file system. And then we're going to use our 256 meg swap partition. And we don't need to use the second swap area. And we're going to leave var shared with the user file system. So we've got root on disk 0A, which is another 256 meg partition. Normally they start out with only 128 meg partition, I believe, for the root, and that's never enough. Then we've got that 86.5 gig user partition, var shared with user, and then 256 meg of swap on partition B. That is what we want to do. And we've answered all the questions, so now we get to sit back and wait. This is a very long install process. "45 to 120 minutes to complete, depending on your distribution, media, and processor type." We'll take that as a challenge. I don't think it's going to be anywhere near 45 minutes. Probably a lot closer to 120. Well, thank you, Harry. Yeah, this isn't, Xbox work, but it is something to do. I'm hoping that I'll have enough time to set up a few Unix systems to show off this year at our Vintage Computer Festival. And it finally is off to the races. 1 out of 106 packages. So this is a DEC Alpha running at 175 megahertz. It's got 64 megs of RAM, 10 base T Ethernet, so painfully slow for transferring files on and off. This unit actually does have a second turbo channel video card, and I've got a custom-made keyboard and mouse emulator to get the X Windows running on the system. Without a keyboard and mouse, it won't start the X server locally. And then I'm using a GreenSCSI, which is my own hardware for emulating the hard drive and CD drives. And amazingly, this is one of the few systems I've played with that will let you mount logical unit number CD drives. So if you have one SCSI ID, you can have up to 8 disk images mounted on it, and Tru64 will actually see all of them and create devices for them automatically. I've played around with HPUX, and you have to manually create the logical unit number nodes so that you can mount the other disk images beyond the first one. And I have not had it work yet for multiple hard drives under the same SCSI ID with separate logical unit numbers yet. Yep, 175 megahertz, 64 megs of RAM. This is 30-year-old hardware, but at the time it was pretty impressive. It's one of the first 64-bit machines you could get a hold of. For now, it's just sitting here and watching it slowly copy all the files over. Some of the packages go a lot quicker than others. Once we get towards the end, it's going to be a lot more interesting actually creating users and playing with some of the CDE desktop environment. Around this time frame was when a lot of the different Unix vendors all decided to standardize on one desktop. The stock storage devices back then, probably anywhere from 8 gigs probably up through 36 gig maximum at that time frame. I think when I got this machine, it had a 2 gig drive in it, which, you know, this is mid 90s, so that's a huge drive compared to what you would have had in your typical PC. Games I might want to play on it. You know, it's funny if you look through the instructions for compiling Doom 3, they actually mention Deck Alpha, but then you look at it again, it's like, no, that's some of the libraries will compile for Deck Alpha. I don't think you could run Doom 3 on it with any speed at all. It might be possible to get Doom to run on it, maybe Wolfenstein. Have to see. This does have some pretty weird audio hardware. It's got a built-in ISDN, and it's actually connected with the audio hardware on board. You can actually plug in a telephone handset and use the telephone handset, and it will combine. I haven't played with all the software for that, but it's kind of like the voice modem features we never really saw on the PC. Beyond that, the plan is to hopefully run some engineering software, some of the Xilinx FPGA development tools, something like that. You know, it's a Unix workstation. They're boring engineering work. It might be possible to run Quake on it, but I'm not sure. It would probably be software rendered on this hardware. Yeah, could run an IRC server on one. Back in the 90s, I actually administered a few IRC servers that were run on alphas. Yeah, power does cost money, and this isn't nearly as bad as the IBM Blade Center or my Dell, what do you call it? 910, 920. You know, those machines powered up just sitting idle are 500 watts. Once you actually start doing anything, you're looking at 1200 to 2000 watts. I am interested to see how the printing support on this is compared to, you know, what we see on a lot of Unix systems where you set up multiple print queues for your actual settings, and then you choose the print queue you want to print to instead of having the more modern print option dialog we get. On a lot of this stuff, you either have a text print queue or you have a PDF or PostScript print queue that you just feed it PostScript and then it outputs whatever you've preset that to process as. Yeah, I haven't really looked into what the electricity prices are right now, but I want to say with either of the big iron, quote unquote, that I have, it added an extra $100 to the power bill every month. And then there was the having to either unplug a clothes dryer to have an outlet to plug them into, or what I eventually did with the all the rack equipment was had an electrician come in and put a dedicated 60 amp circuit in the garage to run the rack. That is a little concerning where it says that broken pipe in the middle of installing motif static libraries. I think I've seen that before and it's run fine. Um, it might just be a peculiarity of this version of Tru64. Uh, well, probably could run a BBS on it, capable, but the problem is finding software. Um, there's a few open source BBSs that will run on Unix, but then you run into the problem of what doors are you going to run? Because almost all of the doors are either meant for DOS, or if you have like a Commodore BBS, you're going to have doors that are specific to that system and they're not going to run on any other system. I think Synchronet and a couple others have managed to integrate either DOS-EMU or DOSBox for running doors, but it's a pain to set up and it's very easy to break. In the past, I've run a BBS using Mystic under, what was it? I want to say it was 16 different QEMU VMs and running a multi-node Mystic setup with a separate VM running NetWare and another one that ran as a Telnet front end. Yeah, actually, one of the demo programs is a Mandelbrot. So when we get to the desktop, we can fire that up. There's a slightly weird solitaire implementation, and it does have, I think, Xearth, but I've never gotten that to run. And then it's got a couple of the standard, like the Xmaze and maybe XI's demos. We'll have to see once we get into CDE. Yeah, Mystic has been still under development. They open sourced it, I think, and it's interesting. I remember back in the 90s, one of the BBSs I dialed into was running Mystic, and I never knew until years later that that's what they were running. And it was just different from a lot of the other BBSs that were out there. Something I haven't seen a lot of is BBSs that use RipScript graphics. I do remember a couple back in the 90s, but I haven't seen stuff that's specifically set up to run it. I do remember one of the BBSs I dialed into was exclusively RipScript, and they didn't support ASCII or ANSI, just RipScript only. If you didn't have RipTerm, you couldn't use their BBS. I think the login screen would let you download RipTerm, and then you could dial back in once you actually launched RipTerm. Well, 30 out of 106. We're moving right along. It is interesting how, at this point it was Compaq, but before that it was DEC, how they decided to not abbreviate stuff like UUCP, and here we have Unix Copy Facility. Yeah, I don't plan to let the magic smoke out. This machine has served me pretty well. Of course, now I gotta find some wood to knock on. I try not to let the magic smoke out of any of my machines. The bottle of that stuff is pretty expensive, and you never can find the right equipment to put it back in the chips. Yeah, might probably would have to compile them though. I don't think they're going to be already out there pre-compiled for this version. This is Tru64 5.0. There is 5.1a and 5.1b. I tried to boot up 5.1b's installer, and it said it does not support this CPU model. So I would probably have to custom build a installer for the 21064 alpha CPU. Well, there's no physical heads to park, so I don't have to worry about that either. Uh, Although it is a good idea to wait till writes stop so that you don't corrupt the SD card. I've had a few SD cards that if you removed power while they were writing, it would permanently damage the card and you wouldn't be able to format it again. That does make me wonder how it keeps coming up with broken pipe in the middle of these package installs. But they all do say that they verified the files were correctly written. Obsolete commands and utilities. I wonder what that could be. Pretty sure this whole operating system is obsolete at this point. This does have the absolutely wonderful Netscape. Fortunately, it's Communicator, not Navigator. I have quite a bit of fondness for the old Navigator 3.0 before they started shoving everything into one package. Combined newsreader and mail, and what was the fourth part of that? Calendar? Yeah, I guess it's the calendar was the fourth part. 40 minutes in, and we're about halfway through with the installation steps as far as all the packages. Yep, getting close to the end. Surprisingly quicker than what I was expecting to see. It might. I'd have to find the source code and try compiling it. That's like the problem I'm finding with either Doom or Quake or even Wolfenstein 3D is finding source code that will compile natively on Tru64. I do know there is a OpenVMS port of Wolfenstein 3D. I've actually run it on woefully inadequate hardware. It was brutal. Maybe 3 or 4 frames a second in a absolutely tiny 320 by 200 window. But Alpha was one of the targets that when they were developing Quake they used. They actually used quad-core alphas to do some of the map compilation at id Software. Almost done. 4 more packages. That's all the packages installed, or subsets as they called them. Not sure what it's doing at this point. This is usually I'm no longer paying attention until it gets all the way to telling me what the commands are to set the boot device. Eventually we should get to that screen. Oh, it is still alive. There we go. So it's telling us what we need to do in order to set our boot device, but it hasn't quite finished up yet. We get a couple of I/O errors. That's normal at the end of the install. So then set boot OS flags A, which I believe sets the boot partition, and then boot default device to DKA 100, which is SCSI ID 1. And let's see how far we get. So there we see our two video cards. And that 10 meg Ethernet interface. Gotta love that they didn't think anybody would still be using this operating system in 2023. So of course it's a preposterous time of year date. Although this does have a dead clock battery, so at some point I'll have to cut open the clock chip and solder in a new battery. So on the previous boot, we did all of the formatting and installation of the packages. Now it's actually configuring all of the packages or subsets. Gotta love some of this redundancy, like the CDE desktop environment, common desktop environment. I'm surprised they didn't put advanced file system, file system. Yeah, it does have a 10 meg Ethernet on board. I would love to get a 100 meg turbo channel interface, but I have not seen a whole lot of turbo channel cards for sale. That is a cute name they chose for their debugger, Ladybug. And of course, we got to install all the keyboards. You know, I have never heard it pronounced any other way than mnemonic. But, you know, I never think air pressure, so I don't ever try and spell it with a P. That's a weird way of spelling it. And yeah, NIC card is kind of another one of those redundancies. Network interface card. Oh, and we're finally building the kernel. Can take up to 15 minutes. I think it might be a little bit longer than that. We'll see. I think the nice thing is at this point, we've set the boot device, and instead of kicking us back out to the SRM console or whatever you want to call it, it will just reboot back into the same. I think there's 2 or 3 reboots before we get to where we can start the desktop. You know, actually getting to this point where we could actually install it on the GreenSCSI has been a bit of a pain. Before this weekend, the raw partition mounting support wasn't there. Most of it was there, but it wouldn't actually let you supply the raw partition as a valid disk image. And then once I got that working, there was a couple more bugs that prevented it from actually being able to read and write to that raw partition. But those are fixed now, and it's actually able to write to a partition that's most of the SD card. Yeah, I think that's one thing that the Blue SCSI and a couple others can't really do. The SCSI SD, the original up through version 6, I believe, used the entire drive and didn't really partition it. It had where the partition or how you separate up the separate SCSI IDs was stored in the flash of the chip itself, not anywhere on the card. And it would just use the raw card with no file system. I'm pretty sure the what's now Pi SCSI, it was RAS SCSI, lets you specify raw partitions as valid disk images. At some point, I'm probably going to have to do a benchmark shootout of all the different SCSI emulators that are out there. And rebooting again. I love how it doesn't give you any warning, it just does it. Oh, and it just fired up the X server. And we're finally at a login prompt. I'm still using the serial console because the X server is currently hooked up with only one video cable, so I've got green and that's it. And of course my keyboard emulator is just a dummy at this point. It doesn't actually have a USB or PS2 port for a keyboard to plug into. And then our super secret password. And of course, complaints about we don't have any licenses installed yet. So we'll go ahead and do that in a second here. Yes, I do know what I'm doing. And it of course defaults to, I think, Ed as the default editor, which is a terrible line editor. And then it thinks we have a VT100, so we're going to fix that right away. And then we're going to mount our CD-ROM that has our license pack image on it. Oh. File system not installed. Why can we not mount an ISO? Oh, well, where's our CD-ROM? Oh, it's disk. Yep. There we go. And then, let's see. Have to make a home directory for ourselves first. And then we can install our license packs. That'll take a while. I think that's pretty normal. It comes with a 400 user license or something, which is weird. The base operating system isn't licensed, but it includes a 400 user license. Very strange. Let's see. DT-bit. Okay. So now that we're licensed, we can go ahead and set up our IP address and our remote X display and switch over to it here. And hopefully, let's see here. Gonna try our luck and see if we can get the X session to start. Oh, there we are. The beautiful blue splash screen of CD. And we get the graphical version of that quick setup prompt we were given earlier. Of course, where is our panel? There's our panel. And the console log. Kind of surprised the splash screen hasn't cleared out yet. I guess it didn't bother setting the desktop wallpaper. We should get that wonderful CDE gradient here in a second. Yep, there is life. We are cheating a little bit. This is the Visual CX server running on Windows 10. But that is one of the beauties of X Windows is you can have remote X terminals and it doesn't care what operating system they are as long as they're running compatible versions of the protocol. Still not seeing the desktop. Well, let's go ahead and walk through the quick setup. I do believe that all of these dialogues are written in TCL TK, which explains why some of them just act a little bit weird. Basically, every window is a modal window, at least locally within these windows. You can still run other applications in the background, but when you click any of these buttons, the window that opens up has focus and nothing in that previous window will actually respond. You'll get the hover over, but you won't be able to click on anything. Okay. We have already done our license. There is our host name and IP address. And then it's going to want our router. And yes, we are connecting this to the live internet, but it's inside of a firewall, so who cares? Good luck getting to it. Don't need mail. Nope, there's our background finally. Don't need a printer right now. And yep. All that looks good. Child process exited abnormally. Wonder what that is about. Do we get any messages on the console? No, of course not. That would be useful. Okay. I do believe I've had that happen in the past, but if we check one of these, we should see that everything is configured already. Yep. And was there anything we needed to do in this list? I don't believe there is. Possibly create a user here. Add. We're going to say Grizzly. And yep, Grizzly Adams. We don't want the account locked. And we want to add them to the system group so they can use SU. I can use SU. Let's see here. That all looks good. Oh, password is needed. Where's password? There's password. Super secret password. Okay. Got to make sure it's secure, you know. So that's that. We might set up PPP later or slip, maybe as a dial-in server. That all looks good. Cloning information if we want to create a ready-to-clone image for other systems. Yeah, that doesn't look too useful. It's just saving your configuration off. And let's see. We can, of course, change our desktop background now, because we do not like the gradient. And CDE comes with an absolutely wonderful selection of backgrounds, because, you know, who doesn't like the brick wall? Or such classics as quarter. Yeah, we're not going to apply that one. Oh, dolphin t-shirt. Or dress shirt, I should say. Or what would you call that? That's one of those classic busy patterns on a shirt. Got a pie crust top. Or even bigger, but, you know, less contrasty. Toronto. Somehow that's supposed to resemble Toronto. I don't see how. And then lots more absolutely horrible wallpapers. I don't think anybody would actually use some of these. You know, of course, Apple used something very similar to this. Great for a flickery nightmare. I do kind of like the dolphins, even though it's very busy. But maybe there's something a little bit less contrasty. Even that's a little bit on the busy side, but I think we can go with that. You know, it's got your classic swarm of bees and, you know, all your classic X screensavers. But we really don't need screensaver, do we? So we'll turn those off for now. Now for the fun part. We got our demo program, so we're going to go ahead and see if we can fire up. We know the Earth display does not work. I tried that previously and it just doesn't run. Don't know why. But we got the classic XIs. Drag them wherever, leave them running in the background. And then a multi-threaded Mandelbrot. Always very lovely. Can even make it bigger and make it redraw it. Yep, it does get quite slow near the center of the Mandelbrot. What else do we have? Old X-Maze. Don't have any audio CDs, so not going to bother with firing up the CD player. It does have an icosahedron window ball. I think that's kind of like the old Amiga bouncing ball, but it's wireframe and very flickery. So look away now. Yeah. It only gets worse the bigger it gets. And then if you make it small, it's, yeah, chaotic and out of control. I think it probably redraws that entire window. We do get one game, or one game program. We got whatever this weird, what is this? Osmosis is the default solitaire game, but it does have Klondike, although I much prefer one card at a time and unlimited passes. So, classic solitaire. Have not played any of these other ones. Kings in the Corner? Yeah, no clue. What's accordion? Yeah, lots of weird, boring solitaire games. We do have Netscape. Yeah, but it's not a shiny disco ball. Yeah, of course we did install all of the development environment, so we do get the opportunity to build a GUI. Of course, I'm probably starting way too many things and asking too much of this system. It is a very early alpha. And yes, it's an error that Netscape had to create a folder for you, or multiple folders for you, and you have to accept the license agreement. And then, of course, it can't communicate with their web page anymore. But we can pull up one of the other system administration utilities that comes with Tru64, if I was able to type correctly. It actually comes with a web-based administration utility. Unfortunately, I haven't set up a user for it yet, so when we go to log in, if the login will even load, it is a Java-based login screen. Slowly loading, waiting on Java. And it will not take our username or password that we have created. And incorrect, try again. And even if we try and log in as root, incorrect, try again. But one thing we can do is the oldnet.com. Oh, maybe not. Let's see. There's that application builder utility that we fired up. Have no clue how to use any of the development stuff on this yet. Haven't even tried. Let's see. Let's find out if DNS is working. Oh, you know what? I don't think we created a route. We've got DNS because it was able to resolve, but it can't reach it. So let's go back up and fire up sysadmin. And where is it? Sysman menu. And this will kick us into one of the horrible disasters of, is it text or is it a GUI? Who knows? It's kind of a mixture of both. So networking, basic network services, and static routes. I don't believe it set up the static route to the internet. No? It did, and that's correct. Default gateway. That's very odd. It might not have restarted the routing service. That's what it was. It couldn't restart the routing service. Perhaps it's having trouble with our name resolution. So let's go to the host file. That looks correct. Can ping that. And obviously it's able to ping the machine running the X terminal. But why can it not ping the internet as a whole? Unreachable. And we get into one of the weirdnesses. Every Unix has to be different. Lookup failed on this address. dns.google.com. So it failed to look it up because it was doing a reverse lookup? Huh. Additional network services. DNS. Configure as a DNS client. I thought we did this. That looks correct. Well, maybe we need to reboot. Let's see. Shut down. And we're going to reboot. And no delay. Yep. And switch back over to our serial port here. Huh. NTP failed. Port mapper's unhappy. I wonder if some part of the networking setup didn't complete like it was supposed to. Is that gonna work? Probably not. Okay. Now we get to see the text version of Sysman. No, there's no firewall rules blocking it. It's probably that it didn't save the IP address when it set up the networking. Yep. Network interface down. Did not save it. That's weird. Let's see. Ping. Still unreachable. But the network is up. And we can definitely ping our DNS server. And, oh, that might be why it's unhappy. Let's see. We might have to change the name server name. That is one weird thing with some of these. If your name server does not match the name that it thinks it is, then it gets all sorts of upset. So nope, that was the wrong place. Cancel. Static routes. That's correct. There we go. So weird. Let's see. And let's try DT login. I believe that's... Nope. What is it? Yeah, DT login. Is that going to fire up on here? Nope. Well, shoot. There we go, finally, CDE. With the hourglass. And of course, all the extra stuff we don't really want. Help viewer and file manager. We just want to fire up Netscape right now and actually pull up the internet. Hello? There we go. And of course now we're actually running it as a user and not as root, so no more danger, danger. And of course we gotta check what the latest news was in 1998 on Slashdot. 1998, maybe? You know, web page meant for really old computers sure does load a bunch of crap. So do we want to see if we can get a couple of games running on here? Can always cheat, but you know, would love to have the actual game running on the alpha, even if we're not displaying it on the alpha right at the moment, because it's way too easy. To just fire up something like what is it? Good old Xbill, but you know, that's cheating because it's not even running on the alpha. It's just being merged into the desktop environment. I don't even know if it's got Sun and SGI, but I don't see any DEC machines here. And of course, Mac and OS2. But that's cheating. Let's see. PR Boom. What's the... Does it have just a plain X? Generic Unix. Needs SDL. Is SDL going to work on Tru64? Do we have a C compiler? That's a very good question. We do have a C compiler. And it looks very generic. Does not even say... I would have expected Digital C or Compaq C, but no, it's just C compiler. So let's grab SDL 1.2. assuming we can find SDL 1.2. This is going to be a little bit convoluted. So let's see. Can't use our sync, at least not with our shell for whatever reason. See. Okay, we can at least FTP the files over. Why did I start a second one of those? And of course it's still copying, so we'll have to wait for that to finish up. I wonder if the file manager here actively monitors, or if it forces you to refresh to see updates. And of course, what are the chances that we're going to have the prerequisites to build SDL? See, does not have that marked executable. Probably should have sent it over as a tarball instead. Probably would have been faster. Well, that definitely does update on its own without you having to hit refresh. There is, of course, no tab completion. And does not look like a tar archive. Okay, do we have gzip? SDL-1.2.tgz. Okay, so that appears to be working. Don't know why it wasn't able to do it directly in tar. I guess it doesn't recognize the -z. Oh, it probably uses -z for compress instead of gzip. I think that was before gzip took over as the lowercase z. It was compress was the lowercase z option. And unknown file type. Huh. That might be something from the GNU version of tar. Is there an option? Probably have to set it to US tar format, since this operating system's before 2001. So let's see. How do we do that? US star. Six. And dash. What is our home directory? Users, Grizzly. Yeah, I don't think we have scroll back either, but we'll find out here in a second. Okay. Nope, no scroll back. So then rm sdl-1.2.tar. So what are the chances it's going to work now that we specified the 1988 version of the tar standard? So far so good. No more long link complaints. And this is just compiling SDL. We haven't even gotten to the games that require SDL. Yeah, it looks like there's even more after SDL that we'll probably need. Looks like we'll probably need SDL mixer and SDL net. Huh. Oh. Well, that's bad. There we go. And SDL 1.2. Probably not going to work. Almost definitely isn't going to work. I'm sure it's going to complain about something along the way. So far, it hasn't kicked out any show-stopping errors. I'm sure when we actually go to compile, it's not going to work, though. It's going to have some pesky dependency on GCC somewhere hidden in it. I'll be right back while this is running. This isn't the fastest machine out there. And of course, no, it does not have USB. Doesn't have OpenGL. It's not running Linux. But it seems like configure might have actually run all the way through. Okay. Definitely isn't going to work. Yep. Make does not know how to make. Oh, goodness. Probably isn't going to work anyway. It looks like other people have had problems even after they made it past make, which we might have to do nmake. Nope. Gmake. Yep, looks like we're going to have to get a different compiler, or I should say different toolchain that has a more modern make that's going to work with these make files. But other people have complained that they've had trouble with it because there's missing things in the X implementation that SDL expects. So I think we're going to have to call it there for tonight and come back to this maybe tomorrow, maybe later. We'll see. Thanks for watching along, and see you next time.